This is Andy Purewal for Boxing Social in association with Betfred. And for only the second time during lockdown, I'm delighted to be joined by Joe Gallagher, this time over Zoom. Joe, first and foremost, how are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Not too bad. Climbing up the walls like everybody else, but looking forward to getting back in the gym.
Uh, Unfortunately, I think we're all at that stage now. We all are all eager to get back out now. But let's obviously crack on with the interview and get into the situation we find ourselves in. How are you guys kind of working around the current lockdown restrictions that have kind of been eased now?
Yeah, well, like I say, the fighters, they've been going by the guidelines. They've been out doing the runs, so forth. And there's only so much you can do. You can run, you can cycle, you can shadow box, you can do drills, you can make up your own little circuits. So some of them have been doing that. Some of them have been doing nothing. And but now hopefully the green light now on Monday for the gyms to be back open and to get people back in. But I've got to be careful as well. We're still governed by government guidelines and the British Boxing Board of Control. So we can't have 10, 12 all in at once like we used to. We've got to look at them that are due to be out first, them who had fights before the lockdown, and I think they'll be looking to be rescheduled, like Callum Johnson straight away, although that European title fight, I think, is up in the air now with the lockdown, when the quarantine, when they arrive. So that's a problem. Jose Burton in the MTK contract, he has two opponents from Europe. So I'll have to see how that goes. And obviously Natasha Jonas, her and Terry Harper, that's a fight that was about to happen. And that's been rescheduled, and there's talk of that happening. But the gyms are just opening up now on Monday, it's 1st of June. Everyone in the training camp wants their 8-10 weeks, so I expect that fight to happen first, second week of August.
Let's obviously just start working through some of your fighters then, and start with Tasha Jonas, as you mentioned there. How is Tasha? Obviously, I know she was very disappointed and gutted by the fact that she couldn't fight because of the lockdown and the coronavirus. How has she reacted since?
Yeah, she's all right. Listen, there's nothing anyone can do or say. We haven't lost the fight. The fight's there. It's a good fight, good domestic fight. They've done some building up of the fight, some Zoom cast, and Matchroom have been pushing it, Sky have been pushing it. So Natasha has been ticking over, doing her own little thing, as you see Terry Harper is as well. And both girls are looking forward to it. It's great to have an old British world title fight, women's for the WBC. And Tasha's all right. She's just wanting to get back in, and you can't be just doing running and cycling and then expect to be ready in 5-6 weeks' times for a world title fight. And do you know what I mean? No one's got to turn around and say to Anthony Joshua on Monday, you're fighting in 6 weeks for a defending your world title. Josh Taylor, nobody. And it's just fighters getting back in the routine, punching on the bag, hardening the hands up again, the tendons, the shoulders, getting the body hard again. And in camp, we all have set things to do. I said it the other week, the fighters are telling me what the way, but just add half a stone on it and you might be near enough to the truth. Do you understand? So we've got to go in, the dietitian's involved, and they've got to start bringing the weight down slowly and gradually. And for a world title fight, we've got to make sure it's the best Natasha Jonas there is, because it's their only opportunity she's got to get, and she's got to take it with both hands. Terry Harper, good world champion, on a roll, great success story. And Natasha wants to be at her best for it, and that's what we intend to do. So she'll get back in, get punching again, and then we have the problem with sparring, which I think has got to be a big problem for a lot of people, because if you're doing 6 and 8 rounders, sparring, you can get certain kids in, but when you're in big fights, you need that sparring to be specific to your opponent. And we're used to bringing sparring partners in from Europe and America. So that's got to be a hard task itself. One, the sparring partners leaving their gymnasium to come to another gymnasium to bring it back. Then if we're to travel and bring them up, as the hotel's open to put them up in, there's all sorts of them type of dilemmas. Like I say, the British Boxing Board of Control at the moment saying no sparring's allowed. So, you know, like I say, we've just got to abide by the guidelines, and everybody be patient, and the big fights that everyone wants to see will happen, and we've just got to make sure we don't put anybody's health at risk.
Just with that Tasha Jonas, obviously, that fight with Terry Harper, I know that it's a fight Eddie was keen to make, one of the first ones on his fight camp proposal. Do you think it's realistic that we will see it as one of the first fights that he puts on, provided obviously the British Boxing Board of Control give him a green light and the government and what have you?
Yeah, I think so. I think though that Eddie and them at the time will hopefully want it to be the beginning of July. That's what they were doing. I don't think they expected the lockdown to have lasted so long for gymnasiums and stuff. So everything's been pushed back, and I just see this being pushed back. Like I say, you can't ask either Terry Harper or Natasha Jonas to be ready in 6 weeks for the middle of July now. From everyone's back in the gym 1st of June, 8 weeks. I think 1st, 8th, 15th of August. Everybody ready? They've had the 10 weeks. Like I said to you there, if you want to put fights on in the middle of July, 6-rounders, 8-rounders with prospects, say Callum Johnson, who was due to fight for a European, is not fought since February last year and is desperate for a fight. Until that European fight can happen, well, let's put Callum Johnson in a fight. He'll be ready to go in a 6, 8, possibly 10-rounder by the middle of July, because he's been training, but it's matching him up with fellow Brits then, because that's all they can fight with, so that there's another problem there.
Just before we do touch on the rest of your fights, just wanted to get your thoughts on a couple of things. We've mentioned it there, Eddie's fight camp proposal. Firstly, what are your thoughts on it?
Listen, Eddie, he's got a great track record of putting on shows. It's just a case, if you tell him he can't do something, he will go and do something. And it's a great idea, just to think that used to be his house that he used to live in, and now it was his office, and now it's got to be a venue for his boxing show. And looking at it with the London backdrop in the background, it looks like it's going to be magnificent. I just feel there's a few teething problems possibly in who is allowed into it. Say Tasha fights Terry Harper. Is Tasha's mum and dad allowed in? They want to see the daughter become world champion. Is Terry Harper's mum and dad allowed in? Do you understand little things like that? Who is? I see Bob Arum's doing a show in June, and there's no press or media there whatsoever. Whether that'll be the same for Matchroom, it'll just be the TV broadcaster. Then you have the quarantine on putting fighters in the hotel 48 hours before it. That's very stressful. It's very stressful, fighters making weight and getting near fight time. They're not the best people to be around anyway, as you know. And then for them to be cooped up in a hotel and not being able to walk here or go there, because lots of people that stay in hotels will like to go for a walk in the morning, come back, go for a walk in the afternoon, and just kill a little bit of time. There's that scenario, that stress of hopefully that they haven't touched anything or they haven't got the coronavirus, then waiting on the results. That can be awful stressful as well. And then the hydration process of the weigh-in, making sure, because all fighters have their own dietitians or they have their own menus and their own way of hydrating. Will the fighters be able to hydrate well? Will the facilities that we're in be able to stock what we need for it? Does that make sense? So when we've gone away with Callum Smith or whoever, whatever hotel we're in, we've had contact with them, spoke to the chefs, told them this is the type of food we'd be wanting and requiring, and could they be able to do that for us? And they have been. So there's lots of little things like that. I remember Emmanuel Stewart saying years ago, it isn't about the big things. When it comes fight time, it's how the small things become massive things. And as I said to you there now about fighters and the food and staying cooped up in hotel rooms for 48 hours. But like I say, it's a brave move. But like I say, hopefully we go forward with it and it's a success and everybody comes out of it with their health intact. As we've seen in the UFC the other week, there was a coach and a fighter with the UFC got contacted coronavirus, and this is what we don't want. We don't want, for the sake of Sky broadcasting, wanting live entertainment, putting people's health at risk, because if anybody's to leave that event and go home and somebody catches it or somebody leaves it and it leads to a fatality, well then who then is at risk? Who then do we sue? Do we sue Sky? Do we sue Matchroom? Do we sue the British Boxing Board of Control? Now, the stuff that I've seen from the British Boxing Board of Control, it's like going into an operating theatre. It's very strict, and they are absolutely making sure that if they want to put these events on, lots of these COVID-19 things have to be in place: sanitisers, masks, gloves, everything else. So they're doing their thing, but we've got to be careful for the sake of delivering. Is it best just to wait a little bit, or do we just go? Because what we wouldn't want to have is any type of fatalities for the sake of it. And it struck with me Troy Deeney the other day, and I know he gets stick because he's on wage, but like he said, they want me to go and stand in an 18-yard box with 15, 16 other players in the month of June, but can't get my hair cut till July. And I just thought, Joe, you're right. What can you say to that?
Just with the shows returning, Joe, what are your thoughts on America bringing back shows in June? And also, we've seen the UFC events without fans there behind closed doors. What have you made of those?
Yeah, I've seen the first UFC fight. It was quite a bit surreal watching it, really, wasn't it? And about seeing the crowd and the atmosphere. Some fighters respond to a crowd. I know Ricky Hatton loved the crowd. I know Anthony Crolla loved the crowd. I know it made them perform better. I've seen lots of fighters in gymnasiums that look world beaters but can't cross over it onto the big stage. Then again, there's kids there that aren't great fighters that are better in the gym, so maybe some of them could be a lot more comfortable without the pressure of a crowd and everything on it. So there's little things there with it as well. You go and ask Anthony Joshua now, because he's so used to boxing in front of big crowds, and go and box Tyson Fury or Dylan White, and they just look at like a spar mentality. And I said to John Dennon the other day, it'll be like being an amateur again when they're on that circuit. Lots of them go to these big events and they're in leisure centres or sports halls, and there's nobody in them, no crowds. You're getting two of the best fighting each other with no atmosphere. So that'd be quite weird. But the fact that they're still behind closed doors and tells you it's still not safe. Because if it was safe, it wouldn't be behind closed doors. And with the US now, Bob Arum going in June, and then they're on about in July. We'll just have to wait and see how them guys go with it. But we've got to be careful here. It isn't everyone trying to beat each body to do it, be the first to do it, and be the first to do it. We've just got to make sure that the fighters, we don't put the fighters at risk, because it's them that are putting their lives on the line here.
Just to circle back then, Joe, to your fighters, and move on to Callum Johnson. We've seen his work that he's been doing for charities, flipping the tyre we saw, which seemed to gain a lot of interest and traction. How is Callum doing? Lot kind of hold up now in lockdown?
Great, Joe. I think lockdown is something that he's absolutely took to it like a duck to water. He redid his garage up, put a bag in, watt bike in. As you said there, he went on raised money for the NHS. I think it's up to 35,000 now. He did a 100-mile bike ride with Olympic gold medalist Adam Peter. Flipped a tyre for 4.5, 5 hours. Did a mini Ironman of sorts, and he's in a good place. His weight's looking good, and then all of a sudden you see him getting deliveries of Millie's cookies or treats or something, just like that. So no, I think he's really enjoyed it. It's kept him motivated, kept him sane, and he can't wait to get out there. And I think this lockdown, all I can relate to is when Anthony Crolla had an injury. What he always took for granted was nearly took away from him. And I feel like this lockdown, it's allowed fighters 2-3 months, a period of time when they haven't been allowed to go to the gym. It's been took away from them. So some will come back, and those that do come back may come back the way that Anthony did, with that little bit more attention to detail, that dedication. And like I've said to some of my fighters, Callum Johnson being one, the egg time is running on you, lads. You've got to make sure you do the best you can, be the best you can for the remainder of your career, whether it's for the next 1 year or 2 years or so. And I think that's what you'll see there. And I see Callum Johnson as one of them now, that he wants to be out fighting. He's got that European, but if that can't happen because of a lockdown and quarantine, then he wants to be fighting anyway. I mean, he desperately needs a fight. He's not fought since February last year. And he's mad for another shot at BTBF. It absolutely drives me mad wanting to fight BTBF. He knows he was that close, and he knows, he keeps telling me he knows he can beat him, and I'd love him to get that opportunity for the rematch.
Everyone remembers that fight with Artur Beterbiev, and it's continued to be said, he knocked him down, and he didn't know how to react. He didn't know what to do next, because I think he kind of surprised himself that this big, powerful man that was seen as the best in the division was knocked down and didn't know how to react, how to kind of put the pressure on and finish the job. Is it something that he regrets? Is it something that he kind of beats himself up over?
He beats himself up over all the time. I get the earache and the phone calls and everything. I've just watched that fight again. And first of all, he always moans about the cheap shot in the back of the head for the first knockdown. But the way that he came back, and then obviously he dropped him. And like I said, I was just stalking him, thinking, wow. And before he knew it, the bell was over. And I remember saying to Callum, I think it was at the end of the second, listen, Callum, watch yourself going in. He's looking for the right hand. I said, and Cam says, no, he says, I'm comfortable, I'm stronger than him. He says, I'm hurting him, I can feel him up close. He says, all right, you know best, you're in there, but just be careful on the way in. And I remember when he got stopped and I picked him up, and as we were walking back to the corner, he went, I can beat him. I want that rematch. I was beating him. And you could see BTBF's reaction. He fell to his knees, absolutely. Like, they emotionally took Callum light and didn't realise they were involved in a bit of a shootout. And I think both fighters will be better prepared next time, and see what he's gone on and done out of BTBF is fantastic. And it's all giving Callum huge confidence to see what BTBF has gone on and done, and he gets confidence by his performance against him. Does that make sense, Andy?
I was just moving away then from Callum and onto Paul Butler. I know you had, you was ready to make an announcement on Paul and his next fight. That all got delayed because of the current situation. Where does everything stand with that? Can you let us in as to what that is yet?
No, like I said, we've just got to wait for this lockdown and this quarantine to be over with. Felt sorry for Paul Butler. We're about to announce a big fight for him. But like I say, I've got to speak to Eddie Hearn and see what does he have planned for him. Maybe he may feature in one of these, as Eddie calls it, Matchroom Square Garden events, MSG events, and if not, then we'll have to wait till quarantine's over and try and do a fight. But he's desperate to get going again, Paul Butler. He's been ticking over, he's been having fights, and he's getting better all the time, Paul. That's the thing. It's mad to say, because he's fought for a world title, he's won a world title, he's fought for another one, but this isn't a fighter that's on the slide. He's still on the rise and he's improving, and it's just, as you know, Andy, it's that opportunity. And Paul Butler is a kid that will stay in the gym and will stay half fit for that phone to go, that if it does go, he'll be able to go, given enough notice.
On to Hosea Burton. Obviously, Hosea, everybody knows he was getting ready for that semi-finals of the Golden Contract tournament. I mean, it got delayed on fight week, or postponed rather. What's kind of Hosea's mindset at the minute, and how are you expecting that tournament to play out?
Yeah, well, Hosea, he was absolutely gutted. Obviously, he'd done a big training camp. He was in the... I know a trainer will say everything, and sometimes it's like a parrot, but Hosea Burton, no man was beating Hosea Burton that week. He was the best he'd been, sparring had been brilliant. He'd gone down on the Monday, was due to go to Sky for the draw on the Tuesday, and they called the show off. So he's had a camp there where he's lost a lot of money. He's got to come back now, get a new date, but we've got to see what happens with that, because it's the semi-finals, and we've got a German in it, and the other kids from Poland, I think, or Russia or something like that. But that show can't go on until them restrictions have lifted, quarantine and that. But Hosea Burton's got to get back in the gym, and that's a show, like I say, that'll all depend on government guidelines and quarantining. But I'm sure once that relayed, they'll be wanting to get that straight away. So I expect that to happen end August, beginning of September for that.
Sam Hyde. Sam, obviously, he's coming back off the loss to Dion Juma. How did you actually see this year playing out for Sam after that defeat?
Well, it was a case of getting Sam back out straight away, getting him a win, and putting him in for a title fight of sorts. There was talk at the time of Richard Riakporhe moving up for the European, Lawrence Coley challenge for the world title, and hopefully doing the Dion Juma rematch for the British title. That's what I'd have liked to have seen. It was a great fight. It was one of the best fights of the year up to now, but the best small hall fight of the year up to now. And like I say, that'd be a great fight. I'm sure Sky would be interested in that as well. But he's got to come back and he's got to get a win, and we'll have to see what happens then with the cruiserweight scene, obviously with Richard Riakporhe and Lawrence and Coley and what they do.
One of my final interviews in person before lockdown was with Eddie Hearn, and Eddie said he was in Cardiff. Chris Smith was going to fight on that card, and he said that they offered you guys a fight for Sam Hyde versus Chris Smith in Bournemouth, but the date was too close to when Sam had fought Dion Juma, so he wouldn't have had enough time to recover and what have you. Can you just expand on that situation?
Yeah, no, Sam, as you've seen, Andy, you were there. Sam Hyde had a tough 12-round fight with Dion Juma. And then, like I say, I think he had some facial damage, Sam, a little hematoma. And that was it. It was a tough fight. It was a tough camp. He had trained all over Christmas and New Year. And then Eddie said there's a fight with Chris Smith. But the date that he first said was like 4 weeks later, 5 weeks later. And I said, nah, Sam ain't got to fight that. Do you know what I mean? He's just come out of the tough fight and needs to rest and let his injuries heal, and that was it. So that's when I said no to it. But then obviously the fight, then Smith got put back further and further, but they never came back for us for that fight. They offered us the fight literally like 4 or 5 weeks from when he had just fought Dion Juma. Would
you be interested in that fight post-lockdown?
Yeah, of course. I'd have to speak to Sam, but of course, anyone who's got a title or a belt, Sam Hyde, as you can see, he was very unlucky against Dion Juma. It was against Richard Riakporhe, and he's a kid that's talented, and he's still only young. I think he's 24, 25, and the cruiserweight division is beginning to bubble a little bit now, like you said, with Jack Massey as well, and you've got Jordan Thompson and Chris Glover. There's good kids about.
Now, on to the Smith brothers. Every time that we speak about Callum, it's always going to we're always going to have Canelo's name come up. It's probably about a month ago now when I read an article from Eddie Renault. And a month ago is May 18th. All the days are coming together in one to me now, Joe. But May 18th, I saw an article. Eddie Renault kind of listing some names for Canelo post-lockdown. Golovkin, Billy Joe Saunders, David Benavidez, and Caleb Plant were the names mentioned. I didn't see Callum's name mentioned. What have you seen anything since, or having heard that if it is the first time, is it a surprise to you that given the negotiations were between yourselves and Canelo, or Billy Joe and Canelo, are you surprised that Callum's name hasn't been mentioned since?
Yeah, I am, especially when Liam sort of like nailed the head on it a little bit. They tried to embarrass Callum Smith by making him an offer and then saying, oh, we didn't want it. Yet Callum Smith did accept a certain offer, and they weren't interested, and it's all smoke and mirrors. It's just red herrings. They don't want no part of Callum Smith, and I'm not just saying it, but if you're Canelo and you're picking a fight between Billy Joe and Callum Smith, you're not decided. So you think to yourself, all right, and after we fought Billy Joe, who should we go next? And Callum Smith's name isn't mentioned in it, but everyone else's is. That speaks volumes. I mean, they were calling him out last year after the fight that they wanted to fight him, and we'll see. Not many people do want to take on Callum. He's too good for his own good, so put a respect. But there's opportunities out there for Callum, and if they don't come at super middleweight, I'm sure there's fights to be made at light heavyweight, like a BTBF, like a Bivol, like a Gilberto Ramirez, and maybe the route for him.
When you look back over those negotiations with Canelo, what's your overall feeling? Do you feel like they actually genuinely did want that fight, or do you feel like they was always going to edge towards and take the Billy Joe fight?
I think they talked about it, but I think when they've gone away and sat down and the risk, Billy Joe's a huge risk. Billy Joe's a huge risk for Canelo. But I just think they thought to themselves, maybe they'll get a title of Billy Joe, and then they could see it as a unification against Callum Smith for all the marbles. I don't know their thinking of it, but both fighters are both risk. Maybe no disrespect to Billy Joe, they thought seeing him as the lighter puncher of the two, and have gone with that and think that they might be able to cut the ring off easy enough, but that's not got to be an easy job for Billy Joe Saunders, for Canelo against Billy Joe Saunders. And the most people just thought Callum Smith, his height, his inside fighting, his punching power. They're still not sure yet, and maybe they want to keep Callum hanging a little bit longer and struggled to make the weight as he's getting a little bit older. He's just turned 29 or 30, Callum, now. So we'll see. We'll see. Listen, if there isn't Callum Smith, there's Callum Johnson. Callum Johnson will fight him.
Callum Smith, that is, he's always said, he's never really struggled to make weight, but naturally as you get older, every fight it starts to become a bit more difficult. With lockdown at the minute of his current situation, when boxing returns, how do you think Callum's going to fare at super middleweight? Do you feel that he might actually have to feel like he has to move up because of extra time away from the sport, out of his own hands, of course?
Yeah, most probably. Like I said, till we get him in the gym and we start getting him doing his testing and his body fats and assessing everything. And you've got to remember, when Callum missed out at the Olympic qualifiers, he was in that light heavyweight when he missed out at them as an amateur, and yet he's lighter as a world champion middleweight, super middleweight. So he's always had a big frame. Yeah, I know Callum's mad for a Benavidez Plant fight. He really is. He really does want the unification. When we were at a show in America, Liam fought, who was on there now, the little kid was on it with his WBC belt, and Callum's like, boss that belt, innit? I want one of them. And he'd love that fight with Benavidez or Plant, but as you say, it's making that happen with different promoters and TV networks. That's always a stumbling block. So he might have to move up and get a WBC belt up at light heavyweight.
How surprised are you that something hasn't materialised for Callum with the WBC, as he's held the diamond belt for what feels like as long as I can remember?
I think Callum is in line. I think Benavidez was due for a defence, and then he had to fight Yildirim, and then it'd be Callum Smith. So because of the lockdown and that situation, that's all got to be put back now. So we'll just have to wait and see. It's great when you sit and you watch and everything else. It's like people have forgotten who Callum Smith and what he's achieved and who he is in the world of boxing. And I know he'll be mad to get back in the gym, get in the ring, and show everybody and get everybody talking again.
Post lockdown, do we need to see Callum now in a big fight? Do we need to see him with a big name in the division?
Well, like I say, he's just had his mandatory against John Ryder, and yeah, he needs it. He needs it. I was saying to him to have had a fight straight after his mandatory, just a fight in America, get over there, defend the titles, and then just stay busy. Stay busy, that's all. It's like everybody knows you have a mandatory, then you have a defence, you pick someone, you beat that, then you're into another big fight, then you have a voluntary, and you have a bit of a touch, then you're into another big fight. We see that's the blueprint for all the world champions. That's what you see. And if Callum after Ryder, I wanted him to fight in America, get a quick win, a good win, and then go into a big fight then, like say a Plant, Benavidez or Canelo.
Just to move away then from Callum and on to Liam. Liam, back in February, I believe, when Kell Brook fought in Sheffield, Liam was there, and there was a lot of talk about that fight. Since then, it seems to have gone quiet. What is the latest with Liam? How do you kind of see Liam's career progressing?
Liam's in a great place. He was busy last year. I think he had 3 fights last year. Boxed him over in Mexico, boxed in America, beat Sam Eggington. He's number 2 now in the WBO. Teixeira has to have his mandatory next. So I just think Liam's just got to sit tight. I think he needs to fight. There's no problem having a fight in the meantime. That's what I'd like him to have in the meantime, and just wait for that mandatory purse bid to be called for him against Teixeira. I think that's a great fight for him, a very winnable fight for him, and one that he can become a 2-time world champion. The talk of the Kell Brook fight and stuff like that, I cannot see that happening. Not both fighters for a non-world title fight, even as a final world title limit. I think the money that Kell Brook would be wanting and the money Liam Smith would be wanting, I don't think it would be generated for a world title final eliminator. Kell's as well very much looking for his big paydays now, his pension paydays, very much as you see in Amir. There's lots of talk with him and Terence Crawford. with Kell Brooks. Some people saying it's just a bargaining tool to get more money for Mehdi. We'll just have to wait and see. But as far as Liam's concerned, Liam will fight Kell Brooks, but you've got to pay him the right money. Liam's the former world champion at the weight. He's the one with that world ranking at that weight, number 2. And and if he's going to give that up and put that on the line, he's got to be paid well. So there again, straight away, you've got a problem is who's got to be the A side, because Kell Brook will feel he's the A side, although he's a 147 coming up, and he'll want the majority of the money. So there your problem straight away. I think that'd be a great fight if there's a world title on the line. So I feel if Liam Smith hangs tight, has a fight, gets Texera, wins it, Liam Smith defending a world title at Kell Brook. Now that's a big fight. Now we can talk about pay-per-view and build it up. So I think Kell's got to stay busy himself, but I know it's very hard that stage of your career to be training and going in the gym and fighting 8 rounds or 10 rounders or 12 rounders that you're supposed to. Just can't get that motivation. So money talks, and then money talks. So for that fight to happen, money has to talk.
Final one to touch on, Joe. Stephen, I know Stephen was kind of giving it one last hurrah, one last push for his career now to try and get another crack at the world title. When boxing does return, what's Stephen's mindset? How Stephen see his career playing out now?
Well, Stephen came back last year after that horrific ear injury. He had 3 good wins, beginning to bubble along. He was shaking off that ring rust. He was getting better. And there's plans to get him out early this year until this has happened now. So I'll have to speak to Stephen when he comes back in, sit down with him and see what he wants to do, whether he still wants to continue. Does he still want to go for a world title, a European title, and see where we go. And like I say, that world title division is all locked up. As you know, Stephen's moved up to lightweight now, so maybe a European title. We'll just have to wait and see what fights out there for him, and let him make his decision what he chooses to do.
There's one fight I wanted to get your thoughts on, Joe, before I do let you leave to enjoy the rest of your day. Somebody you know well, Jorge Linares, he's been interacting with Ryan Garcia over social media recently. If that fight was to happen in the coming months, how do you think it would play out?
It's the trouble with Jorge Linares. There's 2 Jorge Linares, isn't there? There's a motivated one on point, the one that turned up for Crawler, and then there's another one where he's trained and he's there for it, but the opposition isn't what it's supposed to be, and he's took his eye off the ball and he gets done. So a usually motivated Linares, as you've seen, he's put up a good performance against Lemachenko. He wants a rematch for that. I think he'll just school Garcia. I think he'll just be too cute. I'd like to see him back with Ismail Salas. I think they were a good partnership together, and he could get the best out of him. If Linares has just gone over and is on the other side, then I just think Garcia too hungry, too fresh, too ambitious. All that he's got a swag about him, and maybe just a good young one beats a good old one at the end of the day. But it's a fascinating fight. Like you say, Garcia, very fast, lots of holes in him. But it's whether he has any respect for Linares in the fight, and if Linares' chin can hold up. But a motivated Linares, I do feel, has still got one big hurrah in him to beat Garcia.
We've seen kind of, that lightweight division's packed at the minute, and we've seen also some back and forths between Devin Haney and Teofimo Lopez. Again, if we was to see that fight, Joe, what are your thoughts on it?
That's a good fight. I see Eddie saying he wants Haney to fight Luke Campbell, which again is a good fight. But Lopez Haney, that's a very good fight. Wow, that's a pick'em fight, that, and it's a pick'em. I've seen Devin doing work with Floyd now as well and learning in the gymnasium with him. But like I say, it's a new generation, isn't it? And a fighters coming through in that lightweight division, and hopefully they all do get to fight each other, and we can have rematches and trilogies, because there is the potential for it in that division, and it'd be good to see Luke Campbell get involved in it as well.
Joe, I also saw today that it's 26 years since Phil Martin, who started the Moss Side Amateur Boxing Club up, passed away. I know that he's obviously played a big part in your life. What's this day feel like to you?
Yeah. Wow, it's just a mad day. It was like this day last year when we were in New York for Callum Smith. And I was used to think to myself, wow, imagine Phil's looking down now going, wow, look where we are. We're going into the world #1 to Madison Square Garden. And like I say, here today now, 26 years, it just feels like it's gone like that. And because of such a young age that he went out at age 44, and him just having, like I say, 4 British champions. Carl Thompson had just won the European title, just done a deal with Mickey Duff, or one with Frank Warren, and ready to push on his stable of fighters. And it's just a shame everything that is achieved. I always say what Phil Martin did for boxing is similar to what Tony Wilson did for music in Manchester. Manchester boxing wouldn't be what it is today now without Phil Martin. The seeds that were sowed back in the 90s have all bore fruition now, with Billy Graham, Ricky Hatton, Oliver Harrison, myself, all came from the Phil Martin environment and setup. And there's not enough praise given to Phil for the work that he's done in Phil, and it isn't documented enough for the work that he's achieved to have 4 British champions. And there weren't easy ones. Paul Burke beat Billy Schuer, and Frank Grant beat Harold Graham when no one thought they could do. Understand? And it was just a good era, but it's such a sad thing that he never fulfilled everything that he did. And I always feel the work that I've gone on to do, and Morris Kaur and other people is always, and Haroon Hedler has kept the Phil Martin name and legacy going, and continue to do so.
Joe, we will leave that there now, like I say, and I will leave you to enjoy the rest of your day, because I've just checked my watch and I think I'm taking close to an hour of your time, as I always do. But Joe, before I let you go, what would you like to say to everybody who does tune in to watch our interview?
Just everybody stay safe, keep social distance, and be patient, and hopefully big time boxing will be back on our screens, and we're back to the good old days very soon. But patience is a virtue. Let's not rush the job.
Joe, it's been a pleasure to catch up with you as always. Stay safe yourself, and I hope you and your family are well. And I'll see you soon in person, hopefully. Thanks for
Cheers,
very sure.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.